So before finding LSAT Unplugged, I wasn't using any. Well, actually, I may not say I wasn't using any. I used a couple of tutoring services that just didn't really fit my learning style. It was very hard to pay attention in these big classes virtually with like 20, 25 people, people typing the answer in the chat or immediately, like sometimes not even on like a Zoom software, on like some makeshift LSAT tutoring software that's being used so they could have a screen and like other aspects of it like together. So that was like already distracting for me as someone that like thrives in one-on-one situations and in a smaller learning environment. So kind of coming into the test, I knew like based on my 147, 148 diagnostics that I was going to need a little bit more added help. So I started like looking into other services that could potentially offer one-on-one help, and LSAT Unplugged came up, and also had this like opportunity to like do these daily sessions of LSAT work. Like it's all about, I think with improvement in the LSAT, it's all about drilling and how much drilling you can get done and how much real time questions that you can actually do. And I think LSAT Unplugged is all about doing those real actual LSAT questions as much as possible. That kind of allowed me to, like be a little bit more engaged in my own personal LSAT journey. I think at first it was a little bit hard to get engaged because it felt like the score was so out of reach or so unattainable. But after just getting a chance to understand the problems, see more problems, do more problems, do them timed, do them untimed, I was starting to see improvement. I first started with logic games, get like working on my like getting my logic games down packed. Now that's like not even going to be a section anymore. So, that's why I'm taking the June test so that I could like, take advantage of that last LG test that we have. And I slowly started to see improvement from like a -10, -12 on logic games to almost like a -2 or -1, because I was finally understanding what needed to be done there. And I feel like working with Jet, who I think's also similarly on his first LSAT scored a 152, and then ended up with a 173 or four or something like that. And one said, oh my goodness, 178. Look at that. I don't want him to kill me for Jet got a 178. Yeah, and like I think that kind of showed me that like that increase, the score increase is possible. Sometimes like it feels like what you're doing is impossible or you can't like reach it or it's unattainable. But we're talking about, let's see if I could do the math correctly in my head, like a 26 point increase over a set amount of time, and it's not going to happen overnight. And I think that was the first like set of advice that Jet gave me. Like the increase is not going to happen tomorrow just because you have an instructor. It's all about the work that you do outside of these sessions. So I kind of tried to like use those sessions with Jet to only like discuss the problems, the harder logical reasoning questions, the harder reading comp questions. And we did not do logic games together because I told myself that I wanted to master logic games on my own. That was like my like drive. I was like, well, I'm going to handle this 1/3 of the test, and I need your help to master the other 2/3, which aren't as easy to grasp, from in terms of like understanding what was necessary of me, understanding like what it is that the question was asking, whether it's necessary assumption, sufficient assumption, understanding how to identify the flaw. But a lot of it was like reading. I feel like oftentimes like when you're taking this LSAT, you're against the clock. The issue that you have and the reason why you get questions wrong is because you're either reading too fast and you're missing something, or you're not reading like as closely to like the stimulus or to the like subsection that you're reading or whatever passage you're reading, and you're just not grasping the content. I feel like those are like the two types of issues a lot of people had have taken the LSAT, and my issue was both. Like I was not understanding and I was reading too fast. So I was like double confused, at the end of the stimulus or kind of heading into questions. So slowing down helped me in trying to prioritize getting the question in front of me right. Whether it's time section, whether it's untimed, whether I'm drilling or whether I'm not drilling, how can I leave this question knowing that I made the best possible choice? And that's what I learned from my study sessions with Jet. Just continuing to read and ensure that I understand what I'm reading and that I'm not getting confused or confusing myself. Because a lot of the questions that are being asked are pretty straightforward. It's just that, like, maybe towards the tail end, some of the questions get harder. So, if, and then after kind of wrapping my head around that, like, okay, I understand what the question's asking me, I understand what the stimulus is saying. Now I started thinking of, okay, how can I go into every logical reasoning section and get the first 10 questions right? No matter what, right? Because if we want to get that 165, that 170, I can't get two of those first 10 questions incorrect. I would have to try to be like -2, -3, at most -4 in every single section. So I think that was then the next step for me. Like, how can I, like, firstly, I leaned into my strengths, got better at logic games, got, markedly better at LR. So like I have enough to get to that 165, but how can I now like do that consistently every single time? And it just takes drilling. Also, what I'd say is, I feel like I could have studied a little bit harder if I didn't have these other commitments. So like, if there's anyone listening that's, thinking about taking the LSAT, but is like juggling quite a few things, understand that like that will impact your like performance. If I wasn't in grad school, I probably would have been able to dedicate this whole semester to studying for the LSAT, and I probably would be in the 160, 170 range already by now. I think you only need to put in a good 4 to 5 months of hardcore studying and trying to get better at your craft. Some people may say even less than that. But I think if you're really, aiming to get into that, like, the top 10%, top 20% of test takers, I was very happy when I got my 159 score because of the short amount of time. But like understanding that there were some of those hours where I was doing something completely different, kind of, I felt a little bit of regret, that I could have went a little bit harder. But lucky for us, you could take the test a few times, and that's kind of where I'm hedging my bets on, doing better on those next few times around. There are like three things that I'd say are different about LSAT Unplugged. Number one is the student-led study groups. That's something that a lot of other like tutoring companies don't really use or utilize. I think those student focused groups like allow the LSAT students that are trying to get better to continue to like just work away at problems. I think that's one of the main reasons why I improved in logical reasoning, and being able to see different approaches to the same question. And I think that helped a lot with my improvement overall. And the fact that it's student led, right? It's like, no one here is the expert. We're all trying to get better together. And it allows, creates a safe space for questions, for learning, and also to, network with other people that are trying to do what you're doing and get to law school. I think the second thing is the vault. I think there's times where you get drained with doing the LSAT questions after questions after questions. And, I'm someone that like my YouTube algorithm is all messed up now with LSAT like ads all up the wazoo. But like one thing that helped me to get my mind off of a lot of it is hearing from other people that have been successful. I think the vault gives an opportunity for you to like see the people that broke that 170 threshold. They give you the tips that sometimes other instructors that have been teaching the LSAT for 10, 15 years are reluctant to give, like telling you to like lean into your strengths, telling you to understand exactly what the question is asking you, maybe remembering different question types so that you know how to approach questions in the future. Sometimes I'm not sure if it's like a generational divide or what, but like hearing from your peers tends to like, you know, I think increase like retention of knowledge and information very often. And I think the last thing I'll say is that you know, we have actual like law school students that are teaching a lot of these courses. You know, so they're taking time out of their busy day in 1L or in 2L to like teach us how to like, you know, for an hour logical reasoning or reading comp. You know, sometimes people only hire folks right before they go to law school so they can teach LSAT instruction. And I think it's cool because we get to also ask them questions about what their like law school experience is currently like, and what are things that they're doing. Kind of gives us a sneak peek into what our lives could be like someday. So I think those are like there's three things that I think LSAT Unplugged does a great job of doing. I mean, I think it's had a positive impact. I feel like I'm on top of the world, you know, some days because I wake up and I'm like, well, you know, like I have a score that's like above the average. I have an LSAT score that's above the average, and I still have work to do. You know, like so it makes me feel like I haven't yet tapped, or it's a reminder that I haven't yet tapped into my full potential. And it shows me like what can happen when you dedicate time to getting something done. You know, like you discipline yourself, you study as much as you can, you ask questions, and you're not worried about what anybody thinks about your questions or not. You know, even if it doesn't really sound smart, quote unquote smart at first, you know, you keep at it and you realize that now you're asking the questions that sometimes even instructors are trying to like think about a little bit before they answer. I think this is not an aptitude test. It doesn't mean that you'll be a good lawyer. It doesn't mean that you'll be a great attorney. It doesn't mean that you're gonna you know, be arguing cases in front of the Supreme Court just because you get a 180. It's a test of resilience. And I think that that's something that LSAT Unplugged has taught me, that it's just a marathon. And you just got to be committed to the run, and you got to be committed to the ride. And that's kind of the very, you know, important takeaways that I've gotten from this tutoring service. And, you know, I'd recommend it to anyone. Just make sure that you understand that you know, what you're getting from the classes is maybe 20 or 30% of it. What you really need to do is put in the work on your own time, because these people, they're amazing, they're great, but they're not going to take your LSAT for you. So you have to make sure that you understand, you know, what it is that's being asked of you, not only from the LSAT, the test makers, but also what you're asking of yourself. Like, what goal do you want to achieve? You know, set your goals and then work backwards towards them, and try to, you know, get the best possible score that you can. I think anyone can commit to this and like, you know, get a reasonable score. But if you really want to shoot for the stars, it's not impossible. It's very doable.